Hello and welcome to BusinessLine podcast. I'm your host TR Vivek. Yesterday, the big bull, the fabled stock market investor Rakesh Jhunjhunwala lifted the lid on his plans to launch a new ultra low cost airline called Akasa during a television interview. Jhunjhunwala says he has applied for regulatory approvals and could start the airline as early as by the middle of next year. Jhunjhunwala's stock market fame is such that his fans think he has the Midas touch. Nothing that he touches can fail. According to news reports, the big bull will invest about $35 million into the new airline and own about 40% of it. Chump change, you could say, for a man whose fortune is estimated by Forbes to be in excess of about $4 billion. Jhunjhunwala is reported to have roped in Airbnb as an equity partner and assembled a team that has long years of experience in Indian aviation. By his side, running the show would be Aditya Ghosh, the former president of Indigo, currently the clear market leader in India, and Vinay Dubey, a former CEO of Jet Airways. To discuss this development that has set the cat or the bull among the Indian aviation's pigeons, I am joined by K. Giriprakash, Business Line's Bangalore bureau chief and our resident aviation expert who has covered the sector for several decades. Giri also helms and brings out Business Line's excellent aviation section called Flight Plan that appears every alternate Monday. Do check it out. Hello, Giri. Welcome to the BL podcast.
Welcome. Hi. Thank you.
Giri, several years ago, the CEO of one of the largest global airlines told me, perhaps only half in jest, that the problems for the aviation industry began right in 1903 at Kitty Hawk when the Wright brothers took off. The word parlous may have been invented specifically to describe the financial state of the airline industry. And all of this before COVID brought travel and tourism to a swift halt. You know better than most, there is not one profitable airline in India. Indigo's losses almost doubled in the first quarter of this financial year to around 3,200 crore rupees. Do you think Akasha is a stroke of Jhunjhunwala genius or a billionaire's pie in the sky?
So before answering that question, I'll give you a bit of a overall picture about the aviation industry, especially in India, and talk about Kingfisher Airlines and Air Deccan, and then move on to Jet Airways. Now, the entry barriers for launching an airline anywhere in the world is extremely low, right? It's like the LIC policy. You can go ahead and then pick up a policy, but for you to continue uh, paying you have to keep paying every year, the premium every year, that can turn out to be a bit of an issue. So, how much does it cost to start an airline, especially in India? The same amount of money Rakesh Jhunjhunwala wants to invest, around 35 to 40 million dollars. Now you might ask if you want to buy a Boeing or an Airbus, it costs you around $180 million or $220 million, depending on the seat configuration and everything else. And how is it possible for them to fund it? Now, Captain Gopinath bought or ordered for 100 aircraft for around 1 crore rupees. Okay, and
1 crore.
1 crore rupees. And then when he sold off the airline to Kingfisher Airlines, the production slots that were earmarked for Air Deccan's fleet, they were sold off by Kingfisher Airline for around 10 or 20 million dollars. That was some 10, 15 years ago. Okay, so you can actually make money by launching an airline and not doing much about it. Mm-hmm. So there are ways of going about doing it. But if you are very, very serious about launching an airline, then it's not just enough to order for 70 aircraft. It's a very dynamic industry. right? Um, I mean, let me break it into several parts because I can keep talking about this for a long time. But then let me tell you about how I've told you about how easy it is to start an airline. I'm going to tell you how difficult it is to uh, maintain an airline or
Or
keep
run it.
operating that airline.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, what are the things that you need to do? Now, after now that we have got into something called dynamic pricing, right?
Mhm.
An Indigo can actually, or a full service carrier like say Vistara, can actually bring down the price which is below a low cost carrier like Indigo,
Mhm.
because Vistara has very smartly managed to see that its entire aircraft is divided into around 8 buckets.
Mhm.
That means there are certain number of seats which you can afford to buy. That is you can afford to travel. Okay, then there are slightly premium ones, and then a bit more premium kind of things. Now, if a full service carrier can do it, a low cost carrier can obviously go ahead and do much better, right?
Mhm.
Why is it that the Indian domestic airlines are not doing well? There's only one reason for it.
Mhm.
It is because of the deep discounts each and every airline throws at passengers. Okay,
Mhm.
let me give you an example. In the in the in the in the early 90s, a Bangalore Delhi flight ticket cost you around how much? It cost you around 6 to 7,000 rupees.
Mhm.
Today,
Probably
look
more,
at the
I
eight,
guess.
huh?
Probably more.
Yeah, probably. I mean, giving you approximate figure. Today, with ATF prices really increasing a lot, it's touching the roof. You can get it for 3.5 thousand rupees or less than that.
But isn't
Okay,
that a
I'm not
factor
talking of
of
the.
competition as well? As
Sorry,
competition rises, isn't that a factor of competition as well? As competition rises,
absolutely.
you
So
will
so
have price cuts.
so what I was trying to tell you was that competition has ensured that you get airfares at extremely competitive prices. Not only that, the airlines bundle it with say a hotel tariff. They give you free food. You can get a lot of um, get a lot of points if you travel at a certain hour, stuff like that. And if you have red eye flights as well, the red eye flights allow you to travel at extremely low fares, right? One of the bane of the aviation industry in India is the deeply discounted airfares.
So, is your
Now,
point that consumers are making merry at the cost of these large airlines or investors?
yes, it's pretty obvious.
Hmm.
Okay, but there is a lot of other things that are happening around. Very, ironically, um, why the airlines are bleeding or have bled before, it is the airports which are doing extremely well.
Hmm.
You know, so it's a very different kind of industry. Now, why is it? It is because of the fact that most of the private airlines in India, like say a Bangalore International Airport or a Mumbai International Airport, they they have signed a contract with the respective state governments and with the Airport Authority of India, which allows them to charge a certain amount of money to passenger, uh, irrespective of whatever that is happening around in terms of the aviation industry.
The
Okay,
convenience
for,
fee.
for huh?
The convenience fee.
Yeah, the convenience fee. There is a special term for that. So
Hmm.
what happens is that you are able to charge a certain amount of money, and for example, you are building a road, right? the airport can charge, can transfer that, can take the money from the passengers. They are building another terminal. They can do the same thing. They are putting up a wall. They can charge the passengers. Okay, so the passengers benefit in some ways, obviously. Also, the airports benefit, but the airlines don't benefit.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, one of the reasons why Indigo pre-pandemic was doing extremely well was because of the near monopoly of the market. Right now, its market share is around 54%, which means
Mhm.
every second flight flying out of any of the Indian airports is an Indigo airline.
Mhm.
Right now, how that happened may not be very relevant to this discussion, but could be another
Yeah.
discussion altogether, because I don't know why CCI is not taken that into consideration at all. But what I'm trying to tell you is that in such a scenario, would you want to start an airline? All right. Having
Mhm.
said that, I even now I believe that Mr. Jhunjhunwala's bet might be a masterstroke,
Mhm.
and that could be for several reasons,
Mhm.
right?
A lot of his ardent fans certainly do seem to think that. Lots of reasons bandied about, from revenge travel that is likely to happen, when we tide over the pandemic, and the fact that now the Indian aviation industry is fairly open. You mentioned Indigo, and we know about Air India's travails. So it seems like a fairly open field for a newcomer to come and capture some market share.
Yeah. I was telling you about the airport. The term is a user fee
Hmm. Yeah.
that they charge. Yeah. Now the thing is, why do I think that there is a very good chance that Mr. Jhunjhunwala's airline venture might succeed? There are two, three big reasons for it. Number one, um, if you look at, there were what was happening during the pandemic. You know, people talked about how there is a Zoom call, there is a team meeting, and therefore you don't have to travel. You don't have to travel to Delhi. You don't have to travel to Bombay, right? You can get whatever you want, and stuff like that. But very surprisingly, you will see that is going to get reversed. More and more companies are reopening their offices. They are asking their employees to turn up because of the fact that it is much easier to interact with them on physically when they're around, and they realize that it is more effective. That is because of the fact that they have realized that these team meetings and these Zoom calls actually don't work. They only work to a certain extent.
And they'll
Now,
have to reestablish the human network, which
yeah, so
may have sustained us during the pandemic, during the 2 years that we've been working at home. So
yeah.
there is a lot of pent up demand because of COVID.
So initially, what happened was people thought that this is it. You don't have to travel. Corporate executives don't have to travel. But down the line, now they realize, yes, we experimented with this, and we realize that it is limited in its approach.
You
So
probably
therefore,
squeezed out, you know,
yeah.
yeah,
So for
the
example,
value
Jet
out of
Airways.
Zoom meetings. Yes.
For example, Jet Airways. One of the reasons why Jet Airways did very well because the corporate sector was very much involved. A lot of executives flew on Jet Airways. So that is going to come back.
Mhm.
Number one. We talk about revenge travel, that will be there for another 6 months or so. People will come back to mall when they are going back to offices. See, one of the reasons why people travel is they don't have to call up the offices and tell them that I am working out of Bangalore. They can go to Goa and work out of Goa, or to Himachal Pradesh or wherever they want, right? But when they have been asked to come back to work, they can't do that,
Mhm.
right? So what is happening is once the economy starts rolling back, people start going back to their offices. There is a ready-made market out there, right? Meanwhile, what has happened is a Go Air or a SpiceJet or an AirAsia, India, has bled so much that for them to come back uh, to their normal operations pre-pandemic will take a lot more time because they've actually spent a lot of money and they have lost a lot of money. That's not the case with, say, Jhunjhunwala's airline, right? He's going to invest a lot. He Because of his network and the fact that he's a very smart investor. All right, so he knows the game, and I'm sure at some point of time
But
he's going to miss.
one of the problems that have bled the airlines that you named, SpiceJet and GoAir, wouldn't they trouble him as well?
Yeah. So one of the reasons why some of these airlines didn't do well was because of the dynamic pricing and deep discounting pre-pandemic. During the pandemic, there was no air travel at all, but they lost money. For them to freshly inject money into their operations is not possible at all. Even if it is possible, not to a very large extent. Where will they get the money from? Right? So their stock
See,
prices are much.
another reason touted for the potential success of this new venture is that airline leases are much cheaper. Aircraft leases are much cheaper now because of the pandemic, and your costs go down significantly. And also, given the layoffs in the market, it might be very easy to hire extremely good talent in the market.
No, 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 no. See, the problem with Indian aviation is that after Kingfisher Airlines, Air Deccan, and a few other regional airlines and Jet Airways, so the leasing companies, what happens? They are not able to take their aircraft back out of India. Most of them are grounded, and they are parked all around several airports across the country. So for them to take back means they have to get it released from the courts. Like there are several aircraft which are parked in Bangalore airport of Kingfisher Airlines.
Yes, you
It's
see
very
them
difficult
dotted
for
there.
these
Yes.
leasing companies to do it. So they are very wary of the Indian market. So the leasing charges won't go down for the airlines in India.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, that will remain at a certain stage and continue to do so.
Mhm. What about the question of talent? Is the market is there a surfeit of cheap aviation talent in the market?
No, see the pandemic almost as per whatever regulations of the regulator DGCA, you need to renew your license. Airlines have to get their pilots renew their license or keep that operational. So for that, they need a certain number of flying hours. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, if you're flying Airbus, you need to be on a simulator for so many hours and stuff like that. Now, during the pandemic, it's just not been possible for them to do it because no aircraft is flying. Even if they are, very few of them are flying. So therefore, if Mr. Jhunjhunwala needs to get these people, he also has to see that they are trained. Now there isn't much talent. There is a lot of talent there, but uh, how do I put it? Skills that are required to maintain your license that are not there.
Mhm.
Okay, the training is not there.
What do you make of the two other partners that Jhunjhunwala has got beside him, Aditya Ghosh and Vinay Dubey? What is their track record in the Indian aviation industry?
I mean, Aditya Ghosh was initially with Indigo, and whatever success Indigo has had was also because of him, right?
Mhm.
And Vinay Dubey has been with Jet. He has been with Go Air. I think his last job was as the CEO of Go Air, and these two have done extremely well in their career as far as having worked with some of the international airlines before coming into India, right? So they bring that kind of expertise. And I was going through one of the interviews of Mr. Jhunjhunwala. He basically talks about how he is going to empower the the top leadership, and he's going to see that they are given enough powers to do whatever they want, and that does not exist except except one airline in India. It doesn't exist at all, and that's very good news for any top management person to go and work for an airline. And if he's able to, one of the reasons why Kingfisher Airlines did not succeed to a large extent, apart from other issues that it had, was because that the CEO did not get that kind of freedom. He was a professional. He did not get that kind of freedom to run the airline. Okay, and if you are able to do that, most of the airlines in India are owner driven. They are not driven. They are not professionally. There are no major professional or a CEO who runs it. And one of the reasons why Indigo did well was because they brought in professionals and allowed them to run the airline.
So you're saying that if Mr. Malia had decided to restrict himself to choosing the air hostesses and let the professionals run the airlines, probably it would have survived? Probably
Yeah,
it's
to
an
a large
object
extent,
lesson
because
for Mr. Jhunjhunwala as well to not get into matters of air hostess selection.
because see, what happened with Mr. Vijay Mallya was that even though he had a CEO, he was still supervising. Like, for example, if a flight takes off from Delhi to Bangalore, and he will get an alert, and then he will find out at what time it left and what time it's going to land, and why there is a delay of 5 minutes and stuff like that. Leave that to the professional. Leave the, because they know how to run an airline. For example, someone who runs an airline can't actually run a liquor business, right? So something similar. And I find that if Jhunjhunwala has actually talked about how he's going to let these people run the airline, and that's very good.
Giriprakash, on that note, thank you very much for joining us on Business Line podcast.
Sure. Thank you very
Until
much.
we meet again, see you and God bless.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks.